Okay, this is my concrete project. This is my backyard. In this section of grass, I'm going to pull up and I want to add a concrete pad here. I'm going to add a gazebo and a hot tub. This is the process that I'm using to go through this. So this is about a 13-foot wide by 25-foot long. So really the first process is I'm actually kind of doing most of the work myself. So this is just me taking a sod cutter and sod cutting the grass. It goes down a couple inches, takes off that first layer of grass. I rolled it up and then I just listed it for free on my local classified, so that way I didn't have to get rid of it. I didn't need any of the sod, so I just got rid of it like that. And then I was able to start grade after I got all the sod out of there. I could start grading the area. So right here, you see, this is after getting the sod up. I've kind of graded it a little bit, but I dug down a trench because I'm doing a hot tub on this far end right here, and I needed to have the conduit. I need to run electrical conduit underground under the slab and come out here behind. So this is the trench that I dug. I just dug this by hand. It's about 12 inches deep, and it'll be below concrete, so it'll be pretty protected here. And then it'll come through the corner of this, pop up. I had to knock out this section here, and then the conduit will come up right against the house here, so I can run my electrical wire like that. And then I just need to start working on the forms. Now the forms really aren't that hard. I just use 2x6 boards, and I try to get the area level and compacted as best I could, and then just use the concrete forms. So if you can see here, I just used 2x6 boards. I needed to use 2x6s because there was a slope to the area, and I needed to build up this right side higher than the existing pad on the left. And then I just used wooden stakes and then just angled cut board so that I could support it against this other slab. And that way it's going to hold as I pour the concrete in there. Now see if those bricks along the back there, those are going to be along the side here. So I've got about an 8-inch gap along the side of the concrete slab on this side, so it'll have kind of a uniform look. But I'm on both sides. I've got concrete here on the left, and then I got concrete slab back behind me. If you can see here, this is my 2x6 board. Now the slab's going to be probably 5.5 to 6 inches thick in some areas, and then it's going to slope down to the existing slab on this first part. I really need it as level as possible for about 20 feet, and then it can slope down into my existing slab there. And that'll make more sense as I kind of get into it. But I'm going to run rebar, so I'm going to just, this is going to be a steel reinforced concrete pad with the rebar. Rebar is going to really help give it a little extra strength and keep it from separating, minimize cracking. And I want to drill into the existing concrete that I have and really put those rebar in. Now I compacted it down. I put down a layer of road base. So about I used about 1 yard of road base, and then compacted. I rented a plate compactor and I compacted this down. I wetted it down. I compacted it multiple times. I also have a really clay soil, so that really helps get it compacted. This thing is really solid and really nice and compacted. It really helped give the concrete a really nice solid base to sit on. So I'm just going to get my rebar. My rebar I just got at Home Depot. You can get it in multiple lengths. I got it in 10-foot lengths. I think I got probably 20 or so pieces. And then I'm just using this wire to tie the pieces together. So I'm just kind of running my lengthwise and then crosswise. So these are about 3-foot sections or so. And here I'm using my hammer drill. I'm just using a concrete masonry bit and my hammer drill just to drill in these holes and just set the rebar in there loosely. It just needs to be in there, and then it'll harden up once the concrete gets in there. That's really going to help really support the new slab and the existing slab. They're going to be tied into each other, so that way it's going to go not going to have a lot of movement in the slab. And then as well as tying the rebar together with that wire, I'm also using these little these little stands. You can get these at Home Depot. I got them. It's a couple bucks for a whole bag of these things, but you rest the rebar on top of them so that the rebar is not on the ground, that it's supported and floating in the middle of the slab. That's really what's going to give it its strength and support, is if that rebar is in the middle of the slab, and it holds it about a couple inches off. Here's the process. I probably have an 8-inch piece of wire. I just wrap it around 2 or 3 times, twisting it, and then I'm just getting some pliers and just twisting it tighter, really tying those two pieces, the joint of the rebar, really together. So I'm just doing that throughout the whole process. They do make a tool for that, and I didn't feel I needed to invest in the tool, just doing this one project myself here. So really the point of doing this, I'm doing all the prep work myself so that I can really save a lot. And stay to the end of the video. I'm going to do a cost breakdown of what this cost versus the estimates I got to hire a company to come out and do this for me. So what I did is, once I got to this point, I listed on my local classified. I said, hey, I need help getting my concrete poured. And I had a few people reach out to me. There's kind of been a concrete shortage. This is summer of 2022, and so there's been a concrete shortage in my area, so it's been hard to get concrete. Luckily, the gentleman that came and helped me, he had some connections, was able to order it, and was able to get it. So it did take a couple of weeks after this point to get the concrete, but I saved quite a bit by doing this prep work myself, so doing the leveling, the grading, the rebar, the forming of it. So at this point, it's ready to go. It's 100% ready to start pouring concrete in here, and so I just need to the challenge was just finding the concrete at this point. So I felt that was probably the best way. Is I just offered someone, I just said, hey, what would you pay, what would it cost for you to come out and help me with my concrete project? Someone who's experienced. And luckily the guy that came was very experienced, very knowledgeable, did a fantastic job. It was just one guy. Again, the size of this pad, it's about 13 feet wide and 25, just over 25 feet long is the lengthwise here. And then I'm also going to be at about the average depth is about 5.5 inches. So this is going to be a pretty thick concrete pad. We ended up ordering 6 yards of concrete, and I'll show you in the end how it just turned out to be just not enough. This is the little section that I had to break out from my conduit. And here we are, ready to go. Okay, so here's pouring day. We ended up going with this. This is the gentleman that helped me, Doug. He was fantastic. Probably over 30 years experience in the industry. And then we hired a pump, and this added to the expense, but it was very worth it because they had to do, this isn't a big pump truck, this is a smaller pump, so we ordered this is the pea gravel mix, so it's pea gravel and they use a little more cement in the mix, and it's still just going to be just as strong and just as durable. I don't think there's going to be any change, but because it has a smaller rock inside of the mix, we can use a smaller pump. And the pump rental was about $550, but it was worth it because we got this guy here, and he's able to just sit there and lay down all the concrete in a nice level area, just kind of back and forth, just lay out the concrete mix for us. And then me and Doug, the guy that came and helped me, we were able to kind of start working on leveling it out, doing some of the edging, and then I was able to do the edging, and Doug did all the finishing and leveling work. But in just a minute here, we're going to start doing once we get about an 8-foot section here, we're going to start screeding it, and screeding is where you get we're just using a 2x4 that's longer than the width of the whole slab, and we're going to lay it across, and we're just going to saw back and forth and really just start getting it as level as we can here. Right here you can see how the concrete is forming around the rebar, and we're leaving those plastic supports that are holding the rebar off the ground, we're leaving those inside of the concrete. Those are fine just to leave right in there, and they'll be able to keep the rebar supported as the concrete is curing. And so as we get about an 8-foot section here, we'll start doing the screeding, which we'll use this big 2x4 here. So this 2x4 is longer. This is probably about a 15. Actually, it's a 14-foot 2x4, all one piece. Here we are, just using this back and forth sawing motion. And if you can see on the far side against the forms, I cut down all of the stakes that were protruding above the form, so that way that we could do this exactly what we're doing here, is that we could have a smooth surface all the way across the form, so that we don't have stakes sticking up and then we have to dodge those as we're doing this screeding process. So that was the tip that I thought was helpful looking back at how we were able to do this screeding, is we were able to do it nice and smooth, nice and level, because we didn't have any stakes in the way, and we were able to just go all the way back and forth. So this process is we're just going back and forth, pushing any of the high spots forward. It's exposing any of the low spots that we need, and if we see some low spots, we can just get a shovel or a tool and just put some in there.
Oh. And we're going to throw it at an angle like this. So go ahead. Keep going. Keep going until our pile comes down. Perfect. Let's go back here. Excellent. Keep going. Okay, let's go up like this. Ready? Let's go back to you. Ready? Okay, one more. Massage right in the back.
Better for that price, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I see.
I'm eventually gonna build my house up on my truck. I'll probably buy my house first,
Oh, right on.
but I'm gonna get a truck and then I'm gonna start buying the board. What? My VA home loan. Build my house. No, he'll put you the brush over it.
Bryce, give me a glass.
Nice part with having this pump and a pump operator here is that we can just tell him if there's a low spot, he can just shoot some into the low spot, and it really makes this leveling process pretty straightforward, pretty easy, because he has the ability to do that. And so here's our pump guy. He's just actually changing out. He's taking out a section of hose since he no longer needs that. He shortened that down, and we're just continuing the screeding process back and forth, getting as level as possible. Here I am fixing some of these little plastic supports for the rebar fell down in a couple spots where the hose would hit it, which is fine. Just make sure that we keep those up. And then you can just use a shovel or a tool and just fill in any low spots as we're working it, and just back and forth.
Now you want to get on my side, and we'll pull it like we did at an angle. Okay. Let's move our board like that. Okay, now you ready? Let's give it a try. Okay, let's go back. You good? Okay, now let's saw it again. Is he honking? Oh. Good job. Okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Nice, looking nice and level, good. Okay, let's go back behind that hole. If I have time, I'll tape it.
I'm gonna leave you a hole so I don't leave you too much. And
Oh, I
see
see
where you
what
at after we screed down here.
I see what you're saying. You see him there?
We're getting down towards the end of the slab here, and we're still just doing our screeding. The pump operator left us a little bit of hole here, just so that he didn't pump too much into this area, so it'd be harder to remove. It's easier to add some more than it is to take away once we have more. As you see here, as we start screeding, this is where it starts sloping. This is where right about here is where the form starts. So right there is where the form starts sloping down towards the existing slab. So we're able to. We actually had a little bit too much here. You can see how the excess just kind of piles up in front of the 2x4 as we go back and forth, as we saw that down, back and forth. And then as we got to that point, then the pump operator could just give us a little bit more here and fill in that little hole.
That building to that primer anywhere?
Okay, at this point, just getting the rest of this leveled out here, making sure we have enough, and then also we have this little corner piece over on the side that we're going to have to put some in. Now, at this point, the concrete truck had run out of concrete, so all 6 yards have been pumped out. Now, there is some left still in the hose and the hopper of the pump truck, so we thought that was going to be fine, that we'd be able to just wheelbarrow the extra right into that little corner. It's only a 3-foot by 4-foot square that I had to do. So we had enough concrete. However, a mistake that the concrete truck driver made is he started washing out his barrel into the hopper of the pump truck. So he ruined everything that was in the hopper. So we ended up being a little short. There was enough concrete. We just the driver kind of ruined the last batch in the. And so this little section here, what I'm doing is I'm just getting all of the concrete pushed away from the edges, leveling out a little bit, so that way we can add a couple bags. So we ended up having to go to Home Depot and buying a couple bags, actually 3 bags of Quickcrete concrete, so that we could finish off that little square area. So while I'm doing that, Doug here is just using his magnesium bull float to float over the surface and start the leveling, smoothing process of the concrete, just going back and forth. Right now that this is a little more leveled out, smoothed out a little bit, you can see it's down about an inch and a half or so down from the existing concrete around this. And that's where we had to make up with some bagged concrete, which wasn't that big of a deal, but it did extend it. The frustrating part was we had enough in the truck just kind of washed out too soon without us knowing into that. All right, now I'm starting to do the edging.
Too sketchy to put a control button. We'll just soften them. Oh, okay.
Alright, just continue the edging all the way around on each of the sides. Doug here, he has a method where he gets this, he flips a little bit of water on there. He has a little water on this. This is this Fresno float, and he just goes back and forth. Really making it smooth now, smoothing out those, any ridges, any imperfections. He's really getting those. And then he's just using some hand trowels here to do some finishing work. Putting the flat part down, you're just using the edge part.
Yeah, just kind of using some hard pressure so I don't leave a line, because the broom will take this out.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just making sure I get down in the groove and pushing some pressure about right there on the handle. Both ways, like coming back and forward about the same pressure.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help on those other edges, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you. No, I'm glad you. No, they look good. I'm glad you. Perfectionist in all you do, because they look good. Kind of saved us.
Alright, at this point we have the broom finish on there. You just use a broom, a horsehair broom, and you just get that nice broomed finish onto the concrete. And then here's this little section. We had to get some of the Sackcrete concrete mix, 3 bags worth, to really finish off the top, that 1-inch layer on this. So it wasn't that big of a deal. It'll still be just as good. We still had a whole inch to be able to do, which was fine. So Doug here's just finishing this off, making it nice and smooth, nice good finish on there. Alright, luckily this section was in the shade, so it was actually made it a little more workable for a longer time. So we're just waiting for it to harden up before we start putting the broom finish on it. And then this is about 2 to 3 hours after everything's been poured. You can see it's even starting to dry. It's a pretty hot day. It was about 92 degrees. This section here is still pretty wet since it was just poured, and it's in the shade, so that helps a lot. One thing, now this is a little bit later in the day. This is probably about 5 hours after pouring. Doug mentioned that just to do a little bit of misting to it a few times at this point, and then as the evening gets on, just to help it cure a little bit, since it is drying, it is curing fast because of the sun. All right, this is the evening time. This is now probably 6 to 7 hours after it's been poured. And you can see it's really starting to dry, really starting to cure, and it's getting that light gray finish. See the control joints? We just did 3 control joints across the whole slab here. All right, guys. So here's we are. We're about 48 hours since it's been poured. It really looks like it's cured up nicely. This couldn't have turned out better. It really turned out fantastic. The finish is great on this thing. The broom finish looks great. It's level, smooth, no imperfections, no dips. It's just very, very good. I've been through a level on there, and it's very level. So it's only going to be as level as my framing was. My framing was pretty level, and this is where my hot tub is going to sit. So I wanted this part to be especially level. And then you can kind of see right here, it does taper off about right there down. Is kind of where this starts sloping downward to the other slab. Really is looking great. So as promised, I want to do a cost breakdown of this. I am going to leave the forms up. Today's Thursday. I'm going to leave them up for another day, so I'm going to leave them up for 72 hours, just so I don't run the risk of chipping any of the edges, making sure that everything's really good to go before we start taking the forms off. So let's talk about the price. All right, this first set of costs, this is kind of like my DIY costs. So basically did most of the work myself and then helped pour it. So let's talk about the prep materials. So equipment rental fees, that was things like I had to rent a small little skid steer, a sod cutter, a plate compactor to kind of to really prepare the site. Framing and rebar supplies, that was around $200 for those materials. And then I had $50 in road base. So that was the total preparation fees, and let's talk about the cost. So concrete was $1,200. That was to pay for 6 yards of pea gravel engineered concrete from a concrete truck company. The pump truck, so to rent the guy that came out, he had the truck, the pump, and for him to really help assist lay that down, that was $550. And then the concrete finisher, to hire Doug, the gentleman that came out, to help me with that, paid him $600. So the total cost of the project was, we see here, $2,900 was the total cost that for this. Again, this is a 25-foot long by 13 feet wide, and then another little section. It was so 6 yards, finishing 6 yards of concrete, $2,900. Now this is, granted, this is June of 2022. Inflation's running rampant, supply shortages. You know, in the past it probably would be cheaper. Now these two things here, the pump truck and the finisher, those are kind of variable costs, and you know, those depending on your area, availability. I've heard pump trucks can even be less, around $400. The company that we used, they just are not in my area. They're just not really close, so there was a surcharge based on my area, which I was fine with. So $2,900, that's still, you know, it still was a decent deal for this. Now I did a lot of the work myself. If you didn't hire anyone and you didn't have the pump truck, if the concrete truck can just pull right up to your project, you don't need any kind of pumping or any kind of way to transport the concrete, and then you would need to have incur this cost, and then depending on your area and availability and people willing to do side jobs, this can be variable as well. The gentleman that helped me, he earned every penny of that. He actually helped arrange the concrete and arranging the pump and scheduling all of that, and then helping with the finish. The finish turned out awesome. So this was well worth the investment in that. Now let's talk about the lowest bid that I got. I did have companies come out and getting a bid. The lowest bid I got was $5,900 for this job. That high of a bid really is what prompted me to try to tackle this project on myself. And I'm glad that I did, because I had a savings of, if you see here, we have a savings of almost $3,000. $3,000 was the savings. So doing this myself, I saved $3,000. Doing a lot of the prep work, getting everything arranged, and then just finding a guy to kind of come help me and do this. So, guys, this is a doable project on your own if you can hire the right people to kind of help you finish it off. And I'm very glad that I did, because I saved a lot. I got a great product. I was in control of how everything was prepared, and I feel that I got a very good concrete job done at a much less than it would have been to hire a company. Well, hopefully that was informative or educational, at least entertaining. Thanks for watching the video. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.